So my name's Lee Purvis, and it's a pleasure to be here today to talk about integrated corporate communications, really being in the heartland of the North. And joining us today are some very special guests. So please do introduce yourselves. Stuart?
Hey, yes, so I'm Stuart Bruce. I'm the co-founder of Purposeful Relations and Stuart Bruce Associates. So I run two companies. So Purposeful Relations helps PR teams and PR agents to improve performance. Mainly do that through the communication technology, which typically means AI, but not exclusively so. But it also kind of looking at things like how they do planning and evaluation and what interventions. And that's a new company. I also continue to run my original company, which is Stuart Bruce Associates, which is an issues management and reputation management consultancy. And we work with kind of globally advising kind of people on kind of issues around stakeholders and purpose and kind of the full kind of range of corporate affairs. Before that, I have been in communications for kind of 30 plus years, all but one of it based in the north of England, working for kind of clients like Google, Rolls-Royce, Network Rail, Nestle, Discovery Channel. So lots and lots of kind of big names that you might have heard of, as well as kind of smaller ones that you might not have heard of.
Thank you. And Katie, welcome.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. My name's Katie Eborall. I lead the team at Grayling across the north. I'm often told by people I've got one of the greatest job titles ever because my official job title is Director Head of North. It's very Game of Thrones-esque. But yeah, essentially what that means is I lead our teams in Leeds and Manchester. By background, I'm an integrated specialist. So I've worked across both consumer and corporate affairs, and I lead integrated teams across both of those. My specialties are particularly in kind of crisis and issues management, and reputation, and I've done quite a lot of work particularly in retail, property and transport, so with the likes of Marks and Spencer, Co-op Group, First Bus, Leeds Bradford Airport, and Westfield and St Modwyn. Previously, I've been at Grayling for 13 years, and before that, I've always worked in other agencies in the north, so independent agencies, and I've been in the business for about 20 years now.
So the reason that we're all together today, I suppose, is to discuss the landscape of integrated corporate communications, predominantly in the north. So obviously, integrated corporate comms has different meanings for different people. Stuart, what does that mean to you?
Okay, I would start off by saying that I'm a public relations specialist. And the reason I've made that definition is because if you just talk about communications, it doesn't cover the full remit of what we do and what we're meant to do. And I say what we do and what we're meant to do, and I'll come back to that because there's a difference. So for me, the clue's in the name. It's public relations is about relationships. And that's relationships with all stakeholders, because that's what kind of helps to shape your reputation, which is mainly driven by behavior. It's what you do rather than what you say. And I think once you've started off from that premise, then what does integrated corporate communications mean? It should be a given if that's what your goal is. Any other rated? Got an audience over here. Over here, we've got policies, we've got employees, we've got investors. Actually, they're interrelated, and that to me is what the interface is. It's not about the kind of the things you do, whether that's advertising or media relations or events, because my belief is that public relations is channel neutral. You use whatever tools you need to in order to achieve the business objective that you're supporting.
Thank you. And Katie, what about you? Integrated corporate comms, big phrase.
Yeah, big phrase. I mean, I increasingly use the phrase integrated communications rather than public affairs, and public relations, which would have been the two terms that I did in the past. And I think for me, it's about the fact that those worlds are just kind of, blending and more integrated than they ever have been before. And, often, particularly kind of, in my team in the North, people don't specialize in one or another. It's impossible to specialize in one or another because the two things are so interlinked. The political world is increasingly impacting the business world more than it ever has, arguably. Also, organizations are increasingly seeing the value of having those relationships in the political world. So I see it as kind of, an increased integration of business, politics, consumers, stakeholders on the ground, and so that integrated mix is how I would kind of describe things to people, rather than talking in pure play, I guess, kind of disciplines.
And Katie, why do you think clients need integrated corporate comms? What is it? Is it the one key message that goes externally and internally? What do you see that as?
It's a range of things, to be honest with you, and it's so personal and bespoke to different clients depending on what their commercial goals are. I think the commercial goals point is really, really important. What integrated communications is seeking to do is to address some kind of issue in reaching your commercial goals. And so Stuart's he's saying, but it doesn't really matter. It does matter who the end audience is, but what we're trying to do is help them achieve the goal regardless of who the end audience is, but very much kind of having them in mind. And so it's about the tactics that you need to bring to the fore. So I guess some examples of that are, if you've got a big challenge in meeting the demands of net zero and sustainability, you're going to have to look at kind of, who are the political stakeholders that you need to influence to help kind of pave the path to that. Or, how do you convince consumers that you know what you're doing to get to the path? Or if you've got challenges and you don't actually know how you're going to do it, educating people about that, working collaboratively with stakeholders who can help you get there. So, there's a lot of different things that play into that space. And it's really, really interesting times for corporate communications because there are so many of those different examples.
So, Stuart, in your experience, how have you seen the appetite for corporate comms, if you like, within the world of PR evolve over the last few years?
I think it's constantly evolving. But just kind of pick up on one of the things that kind of Katie just said. About kind of the merging of the worlds of kind of politics and business and stuff. It's so true. It's actually been massively accelerated after the general election. And I was having a conversation with a client yesterday about how important LinkedIn as a platform is for political engagement. And the reason for that is there is so many new MPs who've previously had kind of professional roles where they've used LinkedIn as part of it. So they can, it's a natural environment. Now they're members of parliament and they're continuing to do the same thing. But also they're all recruiting teams. There are literally hundreds of new people coming into kind of MPs' offices at the moment, and they're all coming from environments where they've been using a platform. So historically, it wouldn't have been kind of the main routes for kind of political engagement. Now it absolutely is. So that's just kind of a tactical example of how things are changing. The more kind of macro big picture is we're seeing more acceptance kind of client side and at board level of the importance of what we're doing. It's no longer kind of seen as, this optional extra of, should we spend some money on comms? People actually understand that these things, their reputation, they have a reputation, they have relationships, regardless of whether they're kind of paying money to manage it and to get advice on doing it professionally. Seeing that acceptance that you need that senior level counsel about kind of reputation, relationship, communications in exactly the same way as a CEO, wouldn't make a financial decision without consulting a CFO. They wouldn't make a legal decision without consulting the chief legal officer. I think we're beginning to get to the situation where they realise they've got to have that senior level counsel.
I would completely agree with that. The things that I would add to what Stuart said are, I guess, firstly, our news agenda has never been more driven by political elements. And so, you know, even if you've started as a pure play public relations person, you've got no choice but to embrace the political world, because it's the conversations that you need to integrate yourself into. But also, I think that the unusual and bigger global events of the last 4 or 5 years have massively changed clients, I guess, both their ambitions, but also the way that they view communications. Because if you were in a world where you were focused on one discipline, as COVID hit, instantly overnight you had to change and flip to, we're in crisis mode and everything's political and everything's driven by the policies that are being made about COVID. And then, you know, the war in Russia and Ukraine, you know, Black Lives Matter, you know, all of those instances have got kind of political connotations. They've all got significant reputational risk. They've also got a consumer element, you know, so all of a sudden, all of the worlds have become blurred. And I think what clients have realised is that if you've got all of your eggs in one basket and you're focusing on one thing, there's no ability to flex and adapt as you need to those turbulent events. So being able to be more integrated across the mix has great benefits, but also efficiencies.
And we were talking, I know we've talked before today about the North in particular being such a rich source of offerings when it comes to integrated corporate comms and, of course, the wider PR sector. Why do you think that is? What is it that's so great about the North?
Katie had answered that question earlier, but I think she was answering it because she talked about the team is multi-skilled. And they're able to kind of cross disciplines. I think that's one of the things that I've observed from my entire career, is that if you actually look at communications people in the North, they are far more multi-skilled traditionally you would get in London, where, and partially it's just the economic reality is that, you know, because you're kind of fishing in a smaller pond sometimes, you have to have those multi-skills. But that's a kind of, it might be a negative reason that you have them, but it's a positive in terms of your ability and your skills and to advise clients. There's less places to hide. If you're kind of working up here, you've got to be either good or get out. Whereas I think if it's in a bigger market, there's the opportunity to kind of go off to a tangent and kind of still have a role. I just don't think that really exists, especially amongst the kind of the big players up here that are working, you know, like Grayling, that are kind of doing kind of big serious work with big serious clients. So yeah, no, I'm kind of very excited about the potential of people here.
I couldn't agree more, Stuart. You know, you don't have a choice but to be multi-skilled in the North, because you've got to be able to kind of provide that flex. There isn't a big enough playing field to be able to just focus on one thing, until, you know, a lot of people, when they get to that senior level, do then specialise and focus on one thing. But in those junior ranks coming up, when you're learning your trade, you're absolutely flexing between different things and broadening your skill set out. I think the other thing that's kind of setting the North aside is we were already becoming more highly politicised before COVID in a way that other regions weren't. So, you know, all of the talk about the Northern powerhouse and the investment in the North and all of the opportunity that lent itself, we're already ahead of the curve. In some ways, from kind of like where other regions in London might be catching up because they didn't have that environment. So we've already kind of got that way of thinking going into COVID. And so I think that's kind of means that clients are also ahead of the curve. They've also already been exploring the opportunities for kind of integrating their mix and thinking about how the consumer world and the political world and the business world are interlaced, and they've already been considering the opportunities for engagement as a result of, you know, those mayoral authorities. You know, we're lucky enough to have some of the first established mayoral authorities in the north as well, and I think that that's probably one of the reasons that we're seeing such a surge up here.
And before we wrap up, just want to ask you both what you're most excited about looking at the landscape, especially corporate comms over the next few years. What is it that you get so enthusiastic about?
I mean, imminently for me, it's the opportunity, as Stuart said before, off the back of the general election, because there's been so much trepidation in the market over the last year because we've known it's coming. We knew it was going to be kind of, you know, within this 18-month period. And there's been a lot of holding on things and a lot of anticipation and a lot of waiting. And now that there's more certainty in the market and we know the direction and, you know, brand new government, brand new policies, brand new ways of looking things, that's a huge challenge for clients, you know, and it's a big opportunity as well because it's a blank slate, it's a draw in the sand, and that's really exciting because I mean I love strategic work and I love the opportunity to kind of, you know, think about the entire mix and how we're going to do it. So this is a hugely exciting time to help clients, you know, set clients off on that journey and think about, you know, what do the next 2 to 3 years look like for them within that mix. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Stuart?
No, I think Katie's spot on, and I'd actually kind of build on what she said and put kind of the northern focus on it. For corporate affairs, corporate communications specialists in the north, we're incredibly lucky because we have some of the kind of the most important decision makers here. You know, we've got Rachel Reeves, we've got Johnny Reynolds across the Pennines, you know, we've got Ed Miliband leading the Green Agenda, Yvette Cooper, you know. The fact that most of kind of the really important are now led by politicians in England. And I mean, I know when you speak to all of these people personally, saying that they want to listen and engage with business, that isn't just a line. It's actually what they genuinely believe and genuinely want to do. You know, so yes, Labour was elected on a manifesto, but it was, you know, there are lots and lots of detail as policies begin to become white papers and get turned into legislation where they do want to listen and engage. And I think we've got a real opportunity to have those conversations to say this is what the practical implications of what we're talking about are going to be, and work together to shape legislation that's going to be even more effective. And I think we should really grasp. That said, I'm not 100% sure how many people in the north, Katie, absolutely are capable of doing that. I'm not, and I think there's a risk that some people kind of might miss that opportunity to shape the agenda.
Thank you both so much for your time. And where can we find out more about you and your businesses on social media? Katie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. You can find out more about Grayling in a variety of ways. I guess the first one is our website, which is www.grayling.com. Our LinkedIn handle is Grayling UK. We do have a local handle as well, but it's much more kind of, you know, fun team stuff. If you want to see the serious stuff, it's on the UK handle. And we also host a range of regular events for our clients, for stakeholders, for politicians. So to find out more about them, if you email north@grayling.com.
Thank you, Stuart.
Okay, so you can find me on just about any digital social platform you care to mention, and on most of them, it is just my name, Stuart Bruce. But if you want to go to my personal website, which is stuartbruce.info, I have a reasonably up-to-date list of all the different platforms that I'm on, and there's links to Purposeful Relations and Stuart Bruce Associates from there. You can even find me on Blue Sky, where there's actually quite a lot of activity just starting to happen this week. So if you're not already active there, you should probably take a look.
Thank you.